Hello my friends, let's talk about D&December. Playing a barbarian or a fighter type class is boring. Every single fight you just scream, run up to the guy, and hit them. When you level up, new skills and abilities usually just add up to adjusting damage, attacking again, or slightly changing combat behaviors in a way that doesn't often feel significant. Spellcasting classes, on the other hand, end up having dozens of options in terms of what spells they cast, who they cast on, or what they cast it at in order to influence the flow of the game. What often happens in campaigns is that on a spellcaster's turn, the player will spend a longer amount of time finalizing their decision and reading the rules of how the spell works, then finally executing. On a non-magic class player's turn, the GM will usually ask, "What would you like to do?" And the response will be, "I'm gonna hit the guy." Roll dice, resolve, and back to spellcasters who haven't had enough time to plan their next move. A melee class can always try to spice up their hitting with a called shot to a specific part of the body, but because doing this imposes disadvantage on your attack, the player must decide between doing something that is actually interesting at the risk of doing nothing at all, and then back to waiting for the spellcasters. I think this isn't some secret unknown dynamic to the designers of the game, and for this reason, the different paths that can be chosen at 3rd level frequently give magic-esque options to melee classes. But what if you don't want those options? What if you want a pure fighter that can't even fathom how to start conjuring fire from nothing, but you still want to have fun? Having gone from trying to supplement my original rogue with some ranks in warlock, to experiencing the joys of a magic-free character, let me offer some suggestions to spice up your weekly playstyle. Tip number 1. Plan to create options for yourself ahead of time. There are ways to make options for yourself, but if you don't plan ahead to make them available, you will easily fall into the "I hit the guy" trap. Plan to multiclass from the start, or choose a playable race that isn't normally used for melee, but has some feature that can shake up being in an enemy's face. Following this suggestion will result in not being as powerful as the typical role of a rogue, fighter, or barbarian, but it will give you some ways to fight in a less straightforward way. Actually thinking of unique ways to use these skills is still up to you though. Tip number 2. Never increase your stats, always take a feat. Other than magic items or story contrivances that your GM gives you, feats are the only way to customize a character beyond playable races and class progression. If you're looking to be able to do more as a character, making yourself 1 point more likely to succeed on a dice throw isn't going to get you to that end. Focus on the feats that either do something entirely different than you normally do, or grant you new bonus actions or reactions. Just be careful of what your character class normally does with those bonus actions and reactions, and whether you want to prioritize those possibilities. Tip number 3. Play as a human. The optional feat rule for humans creates massive versatility simply by letting you have one more feat. Feats can be huge game changers, and that's why you don't get very many of them on the road to level 20. Having that feat early on will also help to seriously develop your sense of using different options in your game dynamic, before the game itself reaches a peak, or you get stuck in more monotonous dungeon crawls. Tip number 4. Always attack with called shots. Now, I did criticize called shots earlier, but it is legitimately a way to give your attacks greater meaning in terms of battles being unique experiences and allowing impressive contributions among the crazy magic users. When it comes down to dice rolls, if you're using your best skill, then you are more likely than not to be above the average 10 mark. It may hurt to see the higher number that you don't get, but it is still more likely that you will succeed than fail. So crack some elbows, stab some spleens, and if you miss, stab him again. High risk, high reward is more enjoyable than boring, consistent contribution that is just as likely to fail anyway. Tip number 5. Accept your character's boredom. Your character is not going to be as mechanically interesting as magic users are. If you play your character's personality as though their class is the personality, you will get bored. It is entirely up to you to make a role that is more interesting than "I hit the guy." But ultimately, you aren't going to find the truly interesting decisions in the player handbook. Not having magic puts a higher burden on the player to find a way to have fun. Thank you for listening to these tips and tricks that I came up with on how to make melee and other fighter type classes a bit more enjoyable for your campaign. Next week, I'm going to be talking about how I wrote a character that I could become extremely invested in and very passionate about. So I may have a few tips next week, but the next 2 episodes for D&December are going to be more about my personal experiences with the character that I've been playing for the past year. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe so you can see the rest of my D&December content, as well as the philosophical analyses of video games and anime that I do for the rest of the year. Also share with your friends. I don't pay anyone to advertise the channel, so the only way that we're going to be able to grow is with your help. Thank you for watching, everyone, and as always, stay true.